Hello, happy hump day. You are allowed to laugh, Bhavna.
Okay, that's fine. That's all good.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm really awesome. It's been like an interesting few weeks with the big story. Actually, I was like, today we have our royal correspondent, Bhavna Ben.
Oh, I'd love that job. That would be such a dream job for me, royal correspondent. Oh my gosh. Yes, please. I'll take that role. Yeah.
And so what have you been doing? How was your first volunteering?
I've started volunteering at my local library, and that's been interesting. So there's a lot of inductions because obviously, there's lots of different policies and lots of processes to run through. But no, it's great to kind of get out and also meet people, the community, and just be able to like partake and just kind of give something back. So that's great.
And what about your book club?
Our book club has only one attendance.
Oh, okay.
So with book club, they rotate the book that they're discussing every 2 weeks. And the books that they've got on a list for the next couple of weeks, they're not really of massive interest to me. There's one coming up in August, which I am preparing for. So that'll be the next one.
Okay. And I'm just curious, how long did you get to read a book?
You get about 3 months.
Oh,
yeah. So they advertise it ahead of time. Like, for example, the book club in August, they advertised that starting from last month. And so I've got plenty of time if I want to join that book club in August to actually read the book. And it's actually a book that I wouldn't normally pick up. And because of the last book club that I attended, because there was a bit of hype around it, I thought, okay, let's, I'd like to get involved in the discussion. And the only way I'm going to be able to partake is if I read the book, ideally. So that's what prompted me to pick up this new book, which I wouldn't normally read. So,
cool.
I mean, you can attend with a lot of book clubs, you can attend without reading the book, but it is limiting because obviously you're not going to be able to partake in a lot of the discussion. So, because there were 2 members of the book club that I attended last time, where 2 members, they didn't read the book and they wanted to join because not only did they want to feel part of a group, but they also wanted to see whether or not the book would be of interest to them to read.
Oh, that's a good idea, actually. If you're thinking about reading a book, go to a book club that's just read it. Yeah,
that's right. The only thing with that it would be, and it's a bit of a disclaimer here, is that you're obviously going to get the spoilers.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Gonna get spoilers. So what's the book you're going to read?
So the book that I've been recommended, or that was for high discussion, is a book called Cult Classic. I can't remember what the author's name is, but I believe it's based, I can't remember which area it's based in. Again, I haven't started reading it yet. But it's about a woman who keeps bumping into her exes, and the story revolves around that, or comes through from there. So, but the person who was recommending it, she said that she reads, in fact, she's actually one of the book club members, whereby she's aiming to read 100 books in this year.
What?
Yeah, and so she obviously loves books. And when she picked up this book called Classic, she actually ended up buying 10 copies and giving them away to all of her friends because it was
that good.
So when somebody I've met whose target is to read 100 books in a year, and she's just read this book called Cult Classic and she's giving it away to her friends, that was enough for me to say, okay, I'm getting involved. I want to see what this book is about.
All right, cool. Well, let me know. Although my book list is so long, I can't imagine, like, what is that? Is that 365 days in a year? She wants to read 100 books a year. Does that mean she's got to read a book in 3 days?
Yes. So, and I was sitting there doing exactly the same calculation in the intros in my book club. That was what was going on in my head. But then it didn't surprise me so much because the book club I attended the book that I read was called Age of Vice. And the Age of Vice is about 550 pages long. And the lady who took the book club on that I attended, she actually read it in 3 days. Now, it took me...
These people have jobs.
Yes, they do. This is the thing. So for me, I was only halfway through the Age of Vice when I bought the ticket. And I bought the ticket because I ended up having 2 weeks left to finish the book. I managed to finish the book the day before the book club. So I read 250 pages in 2 weeks. And so I was just trying to imagine reading a book, a 550-page book in 3 days. Luckily, the new book, Cult Classic, I'm attending, it's not 550 pages. It's a mere 250 pages. So yeah, that should be a walk in the park.
Yeah, that's mental. No, I couldn't I don't know how I'd find the time for that. That's insane.
Which is why, but normally a book club should ideally give you about 3 months notice to give a book, to read a book, which they do.
That's a bit more.
Yeah, that's right. But then again, we don't often come across people whose target is reading 100 books in a year.
That's true.
So.
I think what I did, I was on a coaching course for 3 days the other week, and that was amazing. So, I was able to acquire some advanced coaching skills whilst they are applied to myself and my own life. So that was pretty transformative and eye-opening for me.
Oh, wow. Okay. What was the biggest takeaway from the course for you?
The biggest takeaway is that this is the biggest takeaway. It's another thing that's popped in my head. Everyone feels like their problems are special, but they're not. And when I say they're not, I mean in the sense that other people have problems, similar, different. Everybody's got problems or had them in their lives. And fundamentally, if you break that problem down, it's not unique. They're not unique. And so it kind of is very humbling to really believe that. It's one thing to say it, but to believe it. And the more clients I see, the more I believe it. Because even if the problem's different, the feelings are the same. People feel rejected, people feel lonely, people feel unworthy, people feel unlovable. So even the problems might be different, but the feelings are the same.
I understand.
And so that's what I mean when I say nobody's special. Our problems don't make us special. It's how we overcome our problems that make us special. So that was my biggest takeaway. It's how we overcome them, because we're all here on a journey to grow, and that's how we grow.
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
Anyway.
And you're obviously applying those skills, to your coaching practice, which is fantastic.
Yes. And my life. I'm a work in progress. I'm not perfect. I'm not enlightened.
I think, aren't we all a work in progress?
Yes, we are. We all are. Exactly. It's funny. Somebody was saying that Dalai Lama, he is what you would imagine is as close to enlightened as you can imagine, if you understand the idea of enlightenment. Basically, this idea that you're a perfect human being with no problems and, close to spirit, close to a god or whatever you believe. Even the Dalai Lama, who supposedly is the human being closest to enlightenment living, would say, if somebody says, so are you enlightened? And sometimes he replies, not today. I really like that.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that saying that we're all spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I was away on this coaching weekend, it was unfortunate that I missed the coronation.
You missed one of the biggest events in history, Tracy.
I know. I caught parts of it towards the end because when I got home, it was like pretty much towards the end. So I did see a little bit, but I missed quite a bit. And of course, we are so blessed to have our royal correspondent, Bhavna, here with us today.
I'll take it. Yes, as a self-proclaimed royalist, yes, I do read a lot about the royal family. I know a lot about the royal family. So, it was great to see this event happening. It was obviously, Queen Elizabeth II, she spent 70 years on the throne. And so for a lot of us, this is the first time we've ever seen a coronation.
And
it was quite, and for the purposes of this podcast too, it was quite uncanny really, because the retirement age that we see is 65 years. And here we have an individual, a man in his 70s, stepping into a job for the first time.
A demanding job.
Exactly. So I thought that in itself was so interesting.
Yeah, I hadn't even considered that. Most people are retired by then, and he's stepping into a new job.
That's right. There we go. Yeah. So, whenever this topic comes up about, ageism in the workplace, let's take a look at King Charles, shall we? So, but we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is I'm going to be sharing the article from The Independent. And the headline is How Diverse Coronation Reflected King's Bid to Modernize Monarchy. The article says, the coronation was the most diverse in 1,000-year history of the ceremony, with a guest list that embodied the king's determination to modernize the monarchy and reflect a multicultural. The monarch is the supreme governor of the Church of England and has the title Defender of the Faith. But he has long made known his wish to be a defender of all religions. And for the first time, representatives from the nation's faith communities played an active role in a coronation in Britain. Muslims, Sikhs, and Hindus joined senior figures from the Jewish faith for the presentation of the coronation regalia. Lord Inderjit Singh of Wimbledon, editor of the Sikh Messenger, presented the king with the coronation glove, a white glove worn on the right hand of a monarch. Baroness Gillian Merron, chief executive of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, carried one of the royal robes. The guest list left out hundreds of British lords and MPs in an active attempt to include people of diverse origins and ordinary Britons. It was a striking contrast with the 1953 Queen's coronation, which upheld the ancient traditions of ceremony. Historian David Olusoga told BBC News, I think what you saw today was a strong representation and a huge effort to show the diversity of faith within Britain. One of the things that's very different between the Britain of today and Britain of 1953. Defence Force personnel and police officers from British overseas territories in the Caribbean, including the Royal Anguilla Police Force and the Royal Montserrat Defence Force, joined the procession from Westminster Abbey to Buckingham Palace. Britain's most decorated nurse, Dame Elizabeth and Baroness Valerie Amos, the first Black woman cabinet minister, played prominent roles in the ceremony in the Abbey. Liberal Democrat peer and former children's television presenter Baroness Floella Benjamin, who carried part of the King's regalia, praised the King for sending a clear message on embracing diversity.
Right. Wow. See, it's interesting. Something else that's worth mentioning, because we talked about it in our coaching thing the next day about relating to this ceremony and diversity, is there is part of the ceremony where he's presented with the sword.
That's correct. Yeah, he's actually presented with 4 swords in total.
Okay. And apparently, and I say apparently because I don't know, that's always been presented by a man. And this time it was presented by a woman.
Yes.
And that is a massive, massive thing.
Yes.
And how some philosophies would consider it is talking about the harmony of the masculine and the feminine. Because the world has become very, very masculine, and we see an imbalance. And the fact that they've taken that away, because for thousands and thousands of years, lots of religions held women up to be equals. You have priestesses and queens, but they kind of got rewritten and almost demoted in religion and in society, of course, but previously to that, this would be a tradition for a woman to present to a king the sword. So that was something else that I didn't know. That was pointed out to me.
Yeah, there were 3 major things that I saw when I watched the ceremony live, obviously. And the 3 main things that did strike me in terms of the diversity and inclusion sector was exactly that. It was a female who was presenting the main swords. And then the second was that we saw individuals of different faiths coming up and also presenting the items as part of the regalia. And they were presented by the Hindu, the Sikh, and the Jewish community. And then the third thing that I saw in the coronation, which I don't think we'll ever see again, is the part in the ceremony where, well, not necessarily a ceremony, but part of the service where it's a Christian service. And we had the Prime Minister reading a portion from the Bible, and it's a Hindu Prime Minister who was reading from the Bible. And so those were three elements which really made me kind of stand back and think, wow, this is reflecting the diversity there in Britain. So,
yeah, I mean, exactly. I didn't see any of that. So I would have been like, this is pretty cool. This looks like Britain to me. This is what we have. It really is made up of all these different faiths and ethnicities. But I didn't see that. I came in watching the part where there was a lot of all the different forces stood. I don't know, it's thousands maybe. I can't remember the numbers they said of the different, armed forces.
Yeah. It's basically all the king's horses and all the king's men.
Yeah, all the king's horses and all the king's men. Yeah, exactly. I didn't see many people of color in that huge array, which I thought was interesting because you do have people of color in armed forces. I mean, that is a thing. So I just noticed these things. I noticed the contrast. And then obviously when the family came out onto the balcony.
So an iconic part of the whole
iconic
pomp ceremony, because that's what the royal family is known for.
Iconic part of the ceremony. I did think, I know it sounds silly, but it sounds silly when I say it out loud. But I did think, it's very white. And I know, of course, well, the royal family, that's their ethnicity, they're white, of course. But I didn't know if every single one was a family member. But that's me, I'm not a royalist. I wasn't sure, like almost like a wedding where you have flower girls and page boys. And so you have family friends and extended people, part of the wedding party. So and this could be a complete assumption, I assume that as part of the ceremony of the coronation, they would have that, which they kind of did in the
ceremony, yes, but you're absolutely spot on, Tracy. It's like when it came to the balcony, then the selection on the balcony, and there is actually, and this is where all knowledge comes in, there's a maximum number that are allowed on the balcony, in whether it be a wedding or whether it be a coronation or any kind of celebration. I think the maximum number, I believe, is 15. It may be able to stretch out to 18, but it's a maximum of 15. And so that's a selection criteria. And in the coronation, the balcony scene, it wasn't just family. It was participants of the actual ceremony. The participants of the ceremony, but it wasn't a white balcony. However, what the media also said, the balcony scene was an attempt from the royal family to show who they are moving forward. And they labeled it as, this is what the modern royal family will look like. And it's interesting that it was all white.
So that was what, for me, I just stood out to me, but I hadn't seen all the diversity in the earlier parts of the ceremony. So for me, that was like, because I assumed they weren't all family. Of course, the royal family's white. But I assumed that, with supporters of that ceremony and coronation, there might be more diversity. And don't forget, I hadn't seen any yet because I hadn't watched it. So I was a bit like, okay. But it was interesting because somebody else commented on it. A prominent actress commented on it, and she got so much stick.
Yes, and I've got the article here. It's from Sky News, and it's a Bridgerton actress, Adjoa. And the headline from Sky News actually reads, Bridgerton star Adjoa Andoh's terribly white remark about King Charles family's Buckingham Palace balcony appearance receives more than 4,000 complaints. The article goes on to say, a Netflix star's commentary about King Charles's family during the coronation has caused anger across the United Kingdom, with a staggering number of complaints received. A British broadcaster has been hit with thousands of complaints over a Netflix actor's comments about King Charles's family being terribly white. Adjoa Andoh, 60, from hugely popular series Bridgerton, had been commentating for ITV's live coverage during the monarch's historic coronation on Saturday. During the Buckingham Palace balcony appearance by the new king and his wife, Queen Camilla, the actor made controversial remarks about the royal family. Quoted, "We have gone from the rich diversity of the Abbey to a terribly white balcony. I am very struck by that," Andoh said on ITV. She goes on to say, I'm also looking at those younger generations and thinking, what are the nuances that they will inhabit when they grow? Ofcom, British government approved communications regulator, revealed it had received over 4,000 complaints from viewers. It is the most complained TV moment in the United Kingdom this year.
Right. And see, what's interesting is you got to be careful. I can kind of think, oh, I probably would not have said that out loud. I totally thought the same thing, but I wouldn't say it on the news, you know.
Well, she was quite, as a commentator and saying it out loud. I mean, it's very, very brave of her to be saying it, because obviously
I don't think she thought about it.
We do think a lot of things, but we don't always say them out loud. And, you know, from her perspective, you know, she's describing what she saw and what a lot of people were seeing. I myself saw lots of diversity in the ceremony. It was clear to see. And when we then pan over to the balcony scene, there's no colour at all. And yes, you could say that there is, you know, that's the royal family. There isn't any colour in the royal family. However, it wasn't all family. Like you mentioned, Tracy, there were, for example, Rishi Sunak, who was a UK Prime Minister. You know, he's a person of colour. And so, you know, he was part of the program. He was part of that whole day. Maybe he could have been on the balcony, I don't know. But the idea is that they wanted to present what the modern royal family looked like. And this is what we have today. We do have a royal family today, which doesn't have colour. But I think we also have to bear in mind that it was only recently that we had the arrival of Meghan, you know, who married Harry, into the royal family. Meghan marrying Harry was the first person of colour to be introduced into the royal family. And with them now not being working royals, we've gone back, you know, a few steps.
They wouldn't be on there. I wouldn't expect to see them on there because they're not working royals. But then that's my question. Was it really just family on the balcony? Was it supposed to be just family? I don't know.
Ideally, it is normally just family on the balcony. It always has been. But this year, they broke tradition, and they had members of not the extended family, but they had Camilla's sister, but also Camilla's friend.
Okay, yeah.
Part of her lady.
Got it. Yeah. So they didn't just have family then. Anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if they can her from Bridgerton episodes.
It'd be a shame. It would be
a shame, but I wouldn't be surprised if the backlash ended, you know, kind of was a blimp in her career. I don't think it should be.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to be what she's been known for. You know, at the end of the day, she's known for playing a character in the Bridgerton series, which is now on series 3, and she does it very well. So let's hope that this isn't going to tarnish her career.
No, I was thinking, where have I seen her before? Because obviously I know her from Bridgerton now. That's made her quite famous. But I have seen her as an actress on TV before. And I was like, where have I seen her? Casualty.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. Well, we don't get Casualty over here in
this is years ago.
Yeah, but obviously, and I think it's stopped running, hasn't it? It stopped running ages ago. But it was one of the longest series, Saturday night, Casualty. On one. So okay, right. I didn't know that. I did not know that. Right.
Yeah, she's in there.
But you were surprised with seeing Floella Benjamin in the ceremony. So Floella Benjamin is a TV presenter, children's TV presenter in the UK, and she was a children's TV presenter in my day. She was on
mine.
Yeah, she was on Play School. She was, and I think she was the first Black woman children's TV presenter, and obviously she retired years ago. And it was such a surprise watching the ceremony, and then normally you'd see 3 members of the clergy coming through carrying the regalia that is to be presented to the new royal. And here we saw Floella Benjamin carrying one of the main pieces of the coronation regalia. And that was great. And I was reminded that she was actually anointed as a baroness a number of years ago. And she does so much work on behalf of the Prince's Trust and also for her charities. And so that's the reason why she was obviously given that role in the ceremony. But it was great to see.
Well, that's good. I'm kind of impressed. I know some cynics might say, oh, tokenistic and that kind of thing. But I just think, well, what's the alternative? I'm just really impressed that Prince Charles has taken those steps and made that effort to really represent Britain in his coronation, despite the whole balcony thing. I mean, really, the family's white, so
there's limited options there, especially since Harry and Meghan decided not to be part of working royals. Limited options now, which is a shame, because even when the whole Harry and Meghan debacle all broke out, and I think Harry was very vocal in his documentary, and he said that it was a shame that it's worked out this way, because having somebody like Meghan, who is of colour, can be representative of the Commonwealth. So, it definitely highlights that, which is a shame. So, but it was a great coronation, I thought, the ceremony. It went without hitch, which is great. It went without much.
There was a little hitch, but it wasn't a major surprise. The weather, and they couldn't do all the flyovers or whatever they were planning to.
Yes, well, that's Britain, isn't it? That's England. And,
yeah.
But no, it definitely went well. So, and it was great to see. And the fact that it's, with Charles, he's been able to very forward-thinking king. And one would hope so, having, he's had 70 years preparation for this role. And so, and it was shown in the ceremony, the fact that he wants to be known as the defender of the faith, the fact that he had inclusion of all the major faiths in the UK. And and so it's going to be exciting to see what this modern royal family, so what kind of impact it has in the coming years.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all that tippy-toeing around the whole, language, because there was something else in the press when I was looking for stories. There was something else that caught my eye. I think it was a photograph of Camilla, and there were objects in the background that were offensive to some because representing colonization. There were artifacts, I guess maybe artifacts taken, when the British Empire were colonizing countries. And those were proudly sitting in the background of these photos. Wow. So apparently that was really controversial. That was another story I won't talk about now. But I just think, it's the thing where you've got to take the current efforts with, they've got to mean something, the current efforts and the intention to move forward, because yes, what the British did horrendous things, with their colonies, and horrendous things. So did the Dutch, so did the Spanish, so did the,
Yeah, I think we have to, as an understanding about the royal family, it's an institution that goes back centuries. So, and throughout history, we have been seeing change. We've basically seen over the last years, for example, when we basically saw the line of succession being changed, whereas it doesn't necessarily, in terms of being a girl or being born a prince or being born a princess, the lines of succession then change. And then also recently we've seen how with Charles being a divorcee and how Camilla is able to be queen, that was also changed. And so there's a lot of things changing that we're seeing, very slow changes with the royal family. And that's because, it's not a new institution. It's been going on for years. And what we have been seeing is over time is that, they're moving with the times. And I think we're seeing now Charles, changing the title to Defender of Faith. That's massive. Having an inclusion of different faiths in a ceremony, which has always, to this day, been a Christian ceremony, led by members of the clergy and archbishops. And now it's, we're seeing members of the public who have had no royal title being involved in the main part of the ceremony. That's a massive change.
There's lots of changes. Hey?
Yeah, but, we're seeing for the first time a member of a Hindu religion, quoting and reading from the Bible. So that's massive change in the royal family that we're seeing. And yes, we had Meghan, who also joined the royal family, and that hasn't turned out the way that a lot of people had hoped, but it was still change. And so it's going to be exciting times to now see how that pans out, how this lands with Charles now being head of state and defender of the faith.
Right. Well, call me not cynical, but reality. We're going to have another monarch in our lifetime, assuming we live to where, grey and old.
What are you saying there, Tracy? What are you saying there, Tracy?
I mean, we're going to see another monarch, so it'll be really interesting to see how we might get to see 2 coronations in our lifetime.
Oh, okay. Now that is being cynical.
Well, how old do you think he's going to live till?
Oh, that's the question, isn't it?
I mean, he's in his 70s, what, 20 years?
I'm not placing any bets. All I can say is that I do hope that I'm still here to see a King William.
Okay, interesting. Well, we'll see.
We'll see, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
But the thing is, we're going back to King Charles. I mean, King Charles is one of the first members, not of the royal family, but it was back 50 years ago when King Charles when he was Prince Charles, he was talking about climate change. And he was talking, he was talking about the environment back then. And he started his work in the environment back then. And he was one of the first people to talk about climate change.
Oh, yeah, he's very...
And I don't think we give him enough credit for that. And
no, I think he's quite forward thinking, actually. He's very, very smart.
And that's why it'll be interesting to see how this pans out.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah.
So go on, next story.
So which other story have we got? In contrast, over in the USA, there's another story that we found about a lady who has sacrificed and given up not given up, but put all of her life savings into what started out was a bit of a passion project, but she basically bought a bar, and she turned it into a sports bar because she's very passionate about women's sports. And so she bought this sports bar and started running the sports bar where it only plays women's sports.
I love it.
Yeah. So the news article, it's from an article from a publication called Upworthy in the United States. And the headline is, "The sports bra bar that shows only women's sports is inspiring girls in the community." This is another reason why this is a great article, because the bar is actually called the sports bra.
I like it.
I thought it was fantastic. So it says here, women's sports receive far less television coverage and attention than men's. However, one venue is attempting to change that. A woman-owned sports bar called The Sports Bra in Portland, Oregon, caters specifically to women and their sports. Rather than broadcasting the most popular sport, they only promote women athletes and their sports. The bar is dedicated to championing athletes identifying as women. The Sports Bra has been open since April 2022 after owner Jenny Nguyen birthed the idea of a sports bar and restaurant for women and girls. In an interview with Mice, Nguyen, who's also an LGBTQIA+ advocate, shared, "At first, I thought that the bra would just be a place to celebrate women and girls in sports. But now I see that it's highlighted and uplifted girls and women in so many different ways that are just amazing and beautiful to be a part of." The Sports Bra's mission is to make great food, delicious drinks, and provide a space that supports, empowers, and promotes girls and women in sports and in the community. If you ever find yourself in Portland, make a point of stopping by the Sports Bra. Even the menu is sports themed. In addition to cocktails, the bar serves meals such as burgers and salads and hosts a number of community events.
Oh, I love it. So Portland, what, Ohio? Is that?
Portland, Oregon.
Oh, Oregon. I don't know the states in America. Portland, Oregon. Sports bra.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that story. They should do that here. There should be a sports bar here, as in Sydney. And there should be one in London.
I think it would take off here in Australia, especially places like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, because over here, the culture is so sports driven. It's all about which team do you support? AFL, there's, with New South Wales versus Queensland. It's so predominantly sports orientated, the culture here in Australia, that something like Sports Bra would be a massive hit.
Definitely. I think it's a great idea. There's plenty of women that love sport.
And there'd be lots of venues available.
And I mean, I'm assuming men can go in there as well and watch the sport.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. I love that story. Just share that.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. I think I'll find it and share it on my socials. I love that story. All right. think it's time for
A time of the podcast.
yeah. What would you do?
What would you do?
What
So
would
what's
you
the
do?
scenario, Tracy? Hit me with it.
All right, Bhavna, what would you do in a meeting?
Is that your best London accent?
That's my best London governor accent, yeah. In a meeting about hiring for a senior role that requires travel. Some questions whether a woman would want to be away from her family that much. What would you?
Well, that would, for me, I find that really awkward, because that's one of the most blatant ways to discriminate someone in a boardroom, is to assume that a woman needs to be with her family, and so therefore travel would be an issue. I mean, that's one of the most blatant kind of ways to discriminate, isn't it? I'd find it quite embarrassing for the person who's saying this. And if I was in the boardroom, I would feel a little bit uncomfortable. If I was the person who this was being said to, I'd probably say, well, what would you mean by that? Why is that an issue? I'd probably just call it out. And I think that's probably what I'd do. If I was the person who this was being aimed at, or if I was the person in the boardroom, I'd probably be compelled to call it out.
So what if it was your colleague that said it?
If it was my colleague, again, I'd call it out. But again, it's the way that you phrase it. It's the way that you frame it, and it's the tone that you take.
So what would you say?
I'd probably say something like, why would that be an issue? Can you take me through that? Why would you say that? Why would that be an issue? I'd open up a conversation. I'd open it out and say, well, and coming from a place of curiosity, as in, why would this be an issue? Or maybe say, why would this be an issue specifically? So I'd open up the conversation.
Okay, in front of the person that's saying it. Oh no, actually the person's not there. So this is like in a meeting about hiring for a senior role that requires travel. So they're talking about the candidate's not there.
And again, I'd approach it in that way. I'd say, if a candidate isn't there, I'd say, why would this be a criteria specifically?
And then they say, because she's got young kids.
I'd probably laugh at that. But I'd probably have to stop myself from laughing at that. But I would probably laugh at that, and because it would be so ridiculous. But another way to approach it is that I might take the resume. I might pull up a resume of the male applicant and apply the same questioning. Well, let's apply this to Mr. applicant's name.
Would you say that to a man with kids? Probably not.
So I would, but that's how I'd frame it. I'd basically put it to the same thing. So, and again, but it would be forced. If I talk about approach, it would be forcing that conversation to be had. So I'd skip all of that approach and just get to the point. And I'd say, why would that be specifically? Why is that a criteria specifically? So it's different ways to approach this. You can take the approach of, pulling up the male applicant and applying the same question, and then having that conversation opened up through that way. Or you could basically frame it by simply calling it out and saying, why would this be a selection criteria specifically for this applicant?
Yeah. And I mean, you've got to be as well, it's all context dependent, right? Like, who said it? Is it your manager? Is it someone really senior? Is it, it really depends. Whoever says it depends how you handle it, right? If it was somebody really, really senior, I'd be doing the curious question. Well, I'll be acting dumb. I'll be doing a curious question. Like, I don't understand how is that a problem? That kind of thing. I might do that anyway. And then if it's somebody that I'm really surprised would say something like that, say a colleague, then to be honest, I'd probably say the same thing either way. Would I be more direct? No, but I think that's pretty direct anyway. Like, I don't understand. How's that a problem? Help me understand. That kind of thing, so that they can think through what they're saying. I think it's fair to give, somebody time to think through what they're actually saying. But anyway, of course, the question, it's based on biased assumptions about this employee's family commitments and ambition. It could mean she loses a major opportunity that she's qualified for, and that your company misses out on her talents. You could ask your co-worker, what makes you think that? Yeah. This may make them realize their comment isn't based on hard evidence. Explain why it happens. So, women are often stereotyped who have children not being career orientated, or especially for young children. You can also recommend asking all the candidates how they feel about the travel requirements and let them speak for themselves. That's actually a really good question, especially if travel is a big part of the role. This comment may be influenced by several stereotypes. For some women, that's women with young families aren't ambitious in their careers, or they prioritize family more than other groups do. And they're more naturally suited to junior roles. All of these preconceptions can keep women out of senior roles they're qualified for. Yeah. And the interesting thing is I've seen this play out indirectly, as in I'm not involved in the decision-making process. I've just heard discussions, and I've seen women make the same assumptions about other women.
And would you say that happens because, I mean, I know that in your industry that you've worked in, Tracy, there's a large component of the role does require travel because of the nature of the work. So this must come up, or you may have experienced this and seen this a lot.
Well, this is the thing, you're right. There's actually a disproportionate number of women in that particular role. Don't ask me why. I'm not quite sure about the reason behind that. But yeah, there's a lot of travel, like a lot. And it's always a discussion in the interview because it's always a question, like candidates will ask how much travel is expected, because different companies have different criteria or like frequency. So the candidate will always be asking that to know whether or not it's something that they're interested in doing or not. So it's not an issue in that sense, as in the candidate's already bringing it up. But I'm talking, I guess, more senior roles that are considered promotions. Yeah. Whether or not the travel is an issue should be up to the candidate, man or woman. Yeah, we shouldn't be putting assumptions. But I have heard, women hiring suggest these same biases, that because they've got a young family, for example, that, they may not want, that maybe we shouldn't consider them.
I see.
And I just think, well, that's up to them. Because at the end of the day, I can understand concerns. People with young children, I mean, people, not just women, children get sick a lot, especially in those younger formative years and going to daycare. They get sick a lot, and all the families get sick, and then they're off work. There's a lot of that. It just happens. It's just, generally it happens. But the men get sick as well, not just the women.
Yeah, that's right. It's a way of life.
It's a way of life.
Humanity.
Yeah. So there's those things, but a company that supports families regardless. So you've got to account for those things, because everybody's going to have those type of problems to overcome.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so that's that one. And I think that's all we've got time for today.
Well, it's great to have another session, and there's some great articles there.
Yeah, there was. Thanks. Thank you, as always, co-host.
Great. We'll look forward to chatting with you next time.
Yeah, I'll chat with you next time.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.